We are getting closer now, Miami Dolphins fans. 2024 NFL Draft, just about a week and a half or so away as of recording today's video anyway. So, yeah, that's what we're going to be spending our time on today, continuing our draft coverage with the top interior defensive line prospects that I would like to see the Miami Dolphins target in this year's draft. And once again, I'm going to be doing this video the same way I did the most recent wide receiver target video. So if you missed that one, go back and check that one out. But much like that video, this is not an overall top 5 defensive line prospects for the entire draft. Rather, it's the top 5 that I believe are the most realistic for the Miami Dolphins, and then the order that I would prefer them in when all the things are considered. The talent that person brings, the talent at what round they're going to be taken, the potential fit with the Miami Dolphins. So that's how we're going to be doing this top 5 today. We are going to jump in a second, but as always, I got to hear from you. Any interior defensive line prospects you got your eye on that you would like to see the Dolphins target, you know what to do. Drop them in the comments. Let's carry on the conversation. And one last quick thing. Stay tuned until the very end of today's video. I got a little nugget about a defensive lineman that actually didn't make today's video. So, yeah, I always want you to stay around until the end of today of the videos, but today's especially. Stick around until the end, as I got a little nugget that I have not seen reported anywhere else. But we'll kick things off, as we said, with number 5, with Braden Fisk out of Florida State. Now, just like Byron Murphy, who we've talked about in the past, and spoiler alert, we'll talk about here in a couple of minutes. We're talking about another undersized interior defensive lineman. He is 6'4", but he's only 292 pounds. But he makes up for that lack of size with the thing that every single draft analyst loves about him, the thing that he put on display at the NFL Combine: athleticism. The dude ran a 4.78 at the Combine, which is just absolutely absurd for a defensive lineman. Jarvis Landry ran a 4.7 at the NFL Combine. But Fisk, man, he puts that quickness on display when you turn on his film. You just wish that he could be a little bit more consistent with it. But man, when he gets that quickness going, when he gets that high motor going, that helps him win early. And when he can do this, he gets in there, he finds that ball carrier. He's making the play at or behind the line of scrimmage as well. It's very impressive. The issues show up when he doesn't win early, or if he gets double teamed. That's where that lack of size really shows up. He can kind of tend to get washed out of place. You just see that a little bit too much. That's kind of why he's ranked number 5 right now. But he currently projects to come off the board in the second round. So definitely a target for us when we pick at 55. Now, I'm going to say something here that kind of applies to quite a few guys in today's video, and it's due to the number of defensive linemen that we've added so far this offseason. We lost Christian Wilkins. We added Raekwon, or we lost Christian Wilkins. We lost Raekwon Davis as well. We'll get to the guys that we added. But because of the fact that we added those guys, if you're taking a defensive lineman such as Fisk in round 2, it probably doesn't come with a huge amount of pressure to either need to win the job and start from day one, or maybe even get meaningful snaps, or a ton of meaningful snaps. Would we want that? Absolutely. The last thing we want is a repeat of last year, where we take Cam Smith in round 2, and what's he go on to do? Plays the fewest defensive snaps of any defender that was selected in that round in the draft. We don't want that. We would want some snaps out of this guy, but that immediate pressure to need to start or play 50% of the snaps, whatever your number that you have in mind is, that probably wouldn't be there for taking a guy in round 2. But regardless, Fisk comes in at number 5, and we will jump to number 4 with Jer'Zhan Johnny Newton out of Illinois. This is a guy that I'm sure you're familiar with, one, because we've talked about him a lot, but also fans, draft analysts everywhere. A lot of people are mocking him to the Miami Dolphins at number 21. And while I don't say that I would necessarily mind this pick in the first round, I am a little bit hesitant to completely sign off on it today. And I'll talk about why here. First, I mentioned all those guys we signed: Benito Jones, Jonathan Harris, Neville Gallimore, Deshaun Hand, Teair Tart, Isaiah Mack, Daviyon Nixon. The list just goes on. And no, none of these guys are proven the immediate answer alongside Zach Sealer. But all of those moves sort of makes me think that the front office is going to let these guys just go to battle in camp, see who emerges. And I'm not saying that that's going to completely deter the Dolphins from taking a defensive lineman at some point in this draft. But part of me also thinks that, you know what, if we do select one, maybe it's not a guy in the first round, where kind of opposite of Fisk or a guy that you take in the second round. If you're taking a guy at number 21, there probably is going to be some pressure for him to win that job, or at least warrant those meaningful snaps. My second point is, it kind of sounds like Johnny Newton has dealt with a little bit of a lingering foot injury that the Dolphins are at least a little bit concerned about. So if we've got, like I said, an entire fleet right now of defensive tackles already on the roster, are we going to roll the dice in the first round with one that may already be coming into the league with a lingering injury concern? Especially when we know how talented this draft is, to the point where I personally think we can find a day one contributor in the first round. I feel pretty confident saying that. Also, just how deep this draft is in general, to the point where I think we can realistically find a solid defensive lineman, even if we're not picking him on day one. So yeah, I like Newton as a prospect. I like what he brings to the table at the position. Just not sure how realistic he feels at number 21, given how things currently stand with the roster. All right, let's talk about another guy then that kind of falls in that same category. We would definitely have to take Byron Murphy at number 21 if we want him, at least in my opinion. If you look at most mock drafts, he's either gone by 21, or a lot of people even have the Dolphins taking him. So a lot of the things that I said about Newton are also going to apply to Murphy. However, the reason I rank Murphy higher than Newton, well, one, he doesn't have that lingering medical injury concern, at least to my knowledge at this point. And overall, I just think he's a bit cleaner. He's a little bit more polished as a prospect. His quickness and athleticism is super intriguing. He's blowing up run plays in the backfield before they can even get started at a pretty high, a pretty impressive clip. But I love the quickness and the initial burst when we're talking about him rushing the passer as well. His overall sack stats, they're not off the charts by any means. His career high is 5 for a season, which isn't terrible for an interior defensive lineman. But like I said, that number is just not eye-popping. I do, though, think that he has some untapped potential in that department as well. And I say that knowing that he had 36 quarterback hurries last year while he was at Texas. So in my opinion, it is just a matter of time before all of those pressures that he's putting on opposing teams' quarterbacks, they start turning into resulting in sacks. So yeah, he's a little undersized. Yeah, he's going to need to learn how to navigate playing as an undersized interior defensive lineman at the NFL level, which is definitely going to be a learning curve. But the tools are there, the athleticism in there. And while I'm a broken record on this, I want offensive linemen. I want an edge in round one. I would really like one of those two positions. I would understand what the Miami Dolphins see if they end up making Murphy the pick at 21. All right, let's go to number 2 here, Chris Jenkins. Here's a second round target, which, as I've alluded to, is a more comfortable round, in my opinion, to be targeting an interior defensive lineman. But once again, he's another undersized interior defensive lineman. But much like the other guys that we talked about, plays with that quickness, that athleticism, that high motor to help overcome some of those shortcomings. He doesn't have the eye-popping sack numbers either. However, in part of my studying and watching and reading what other draft analysts think about him as well, a lot of people think he's got more in the bag when it comes to rushing the passer than what he's been able to put on tape so far. So once again, potentially untapped part of his game. But man, does he have the strength, especially for his size, pretty impressive strength. When he gets that quick jump, off the snap, and that's one of the top things you want to look for when watching interior defensive linemen. He can, despite that size, get in there and clog those run lanes up. So that's very impressive as well. And obviously he's got that NFL bloodline with his dad previously playing in the league as well. But at the end of the day, one of those second round interior defensive line prospects, I wouldn't mind adding to what we'll call the cluster of guys that we have currently at the defensive tackle position. All right, so here's my dream scenario when it comes to the Miami Dolphins interior defensive linemen and the 2024 NFL draft. If we can somehow scoop up Christian Boyd out of Northern Iowa with one of our day 3 picks, consider me ecstatic. The biggest knock that you're going to see about him isn't necessarily anything that's eye-popping, like physical or technique-wise. He's not a perfect prospect by any means, but the biggest thing that you're going to see about him that's a negative It's simply the competition that he faced. It's how do you extrapolate that when he's going against bigger and better guys? Because being at Northern Iowa, you're obviously not playing the top tier athletes, the top tier guys. His tape is relatively clean, and his production over the years was all pretty damn legit. The thing is, it's just not against that top tier talent. But when it was put to the test during drills at the East-West Shrine Bowl, he did live up to what we see on tape. The tape matched what we were able to see there. And a lot of those reps were coming against some bigger schools as well. So everything that we've seen so far from him this offseason typically has kind of matched up to what he was putting on tape while at Northern Iowa. Now, making this pick even more intriguing is the fact that the Dolphins had one of their pre-draft visits with Christian Boyd, and the front office and the coaching staff absolutely fell in love with Christian Boyd. Now, that's a nugget for you in today's video as well. That's not the one I alluded to earlier, but that is something I haven't seen as well. But the coaching staff, the front office, absolutely fell in love with him as a prospect and as a person. But if we look at him and the prospect, man, he's got good size. Like some of the other guys, I love his quickness off of the snap. Like I said, that's huge for interior defensive linemen. He's proven the ability to clog run lanes. He's another guy that I think can continue to develop as a pass rusher from the interior as well. So that is my dream scenario. And I think for like the third straight video, I've had to pause. So sorry for any jumpiness there. But that is my dream scenario. Give me my offensive lineman or my edge rusher in round 1. Give me best player available in round 2. Then somehow give me Christian Boyd with one of those day 3 picks. And you know what? We'll be having some of those celebratory drinks during some of our draft recap videos. But that nugget that I alluded to in the intro, you likely noticed that T'Vondre Sweat was not included in today's video. I have been informed that following his DWI, the Miami Dolphins have essentially eliminated him from their thought process when it comes to their pick at number 55. Now, if he falls in the draft, or if we end up with some additional draft picks, things may change. We may take a chance with him. But how things stand today with the picks that we currently have, T'Vondre Sweat is not being considered by the Miami Dolphins at number 55. So like I said, there's a little bit of a nugget for you as well. Hope you found that information good, because I'm pretty confident at least somebody was going to bring up the idea of T'Vondre Sweat being a target in this year's draft as well. So I wanted to present the information that I had for you. I will cut it there for today, but as I mentioned, drop any interior defensive line prospects you'd like to see the Dolphins target in the comments there. Let's carry on the conversation leading up to draft day. I will be back with more pre-draft videos. I got quite a few I still want to get to before we kick things off, I believe on April 25th. So I will cut it there for today, Dolphins fans. But until next time, Fins